They thought they erased me with a calendar invite. They forgot who wrote the system. My name is Lucian Hale. I'm 44 years old. For the past decade, I was the lead systems architect at a mid-sized analytics startup called Arcanum. I helped build it from the ground up, code base, infrastructure, everything. I wasn't the face of the company. Never wanted to be. But every client dashboard they sold, every back-end handshake with our API, every data stream they bragged about in pitch decks, ran through code I personally wrote. And buried deep in that code, along with a few overlooked legal lines, was something else. Something they didn't see coming. The day they let me go, it wasn't loud. No confrontation. No final meeting. Just a 4:30 p.m. calendar invite labeled transition discussion. The kind of name HR uses when they want plausible deniability. I walked in. The room was quiet. CEO across the table. COO beside her. HR rep perched awkwardly with a manila folder she wouldn't open until the script was over. They thanked me first. Said the company had reached a new stage of growth. That it was time to align leadership with the next phase. And how much they appreciated my contributions to the early build. They used words like honor, gratitude, and respect. But I already knew what was coming. I'd seen the signs months ago. They phased me out slowly, one project at a time. First, the product team stopped including me in roadmap calls. Then engineering streamlined their check-in process. My name quietly left off the reviewer list. Even my access to certain dev environments had quietly expired. I didn't ask for it back. Because I didn't need it. The system was still mine, not just legally, structurally. Every major function still depended on a core module I wrote 7 years ago. We called it Hale Just Core. They never renamed it. They couldn't. Because if they did, the dependencies would break. That module was like bone marrow. You don't see it. You don't think about it. But without it, nothing runs. It controlled license verification, data authentication, failover protocols, and more importantly, it carried an embedded clause referenced directly from the founding contract. Clause 9.2c, IP reversion rights. It was my insurance. Written at the beginning when everything was still duct tape and ramen. Back when no one cared what went into the paperwork as long as the system worked. I built the system, so I wrote the clause. They didn't remember that, but I did. That afternoon, after they handed me the termination packet and escorted me to the elevator security badge handshake, I didn't argue. I didn't speak much at all. I just walked out with a slim black USB drive in my pocket. And a printed copy of the original contract folded inside the sleeve of my laptop bag. They thought it was over. I was already writing the next line. I drove home, didn't play music, didn't make a call, just sat in silence replaying the wording in my head. In the event of unjust termination without formal cause, all ownership and operational license of core intellectual property reverts to the original author as specified in Appendix A. Appendix A listed Hale Core line by line. They signed it. They never amended it. They forgot it existed. I didn't. That night, I sat down at my desk, logged into the private server I kept off-site legal encrypted, and I stared at the screen. Not to react, not yet, just to remember. I opened the file Hale Core Trigger Protocol v3.7. Didn't run it, just hovered. That file didn't delete anything. Didn't corrupt or damage or sabotage. It simply sent a system-wide command to revoke all external licenses and verify source origin per the original architecture. A soft switch. Silent. But absolute. I didn't click it that night. I wasn't angry. Not even bitter. Just cold. Like a door had shut. Not slammed. Not locked. Just shut. And I was on the other side now. People ask me sometimes, why didn't I stop them? Why didn't I protest? Because I didn't need to. I'd already built the system. I'd already built the clause. If you're still listening, I want to ask one thing. If you've ever built something, really built it, not just pitched it or marketed it, but written the bones that make it live, make sure you still own it, because one day someone will try to take it from you. And when they do, you'd better have written yourself back in. If this story resonates with you, if you've been on the wrong end of someone else's power trip, hit subscribe. I'm telling all of it, From the first module to the final trigger. No noise, no drama, just truth. And truth always leaves a log. The first version of Hail Core wasn't written in an office. It wasn't reviewed by a product team or logged in a ticketing system. It was written at 3:12 a.m. on a second-hand laptop sitting cross-legged on the floor of my studio apartment. The room smelled like burned soy sauce and plastic insulation. A cheap power strip had just shorted out and killed the lights. But the battery still held a charge, and the code was flowing. That night I wasn't thinking about contracts or investors or clause numbers. I was just trying to get the damn thing to run. The goal was simple. Build a clean, scalable back-end system for streaming data from multiple endpoints. Secure, fast, minimalist, no bloat, no fluff, just bones. I wasn't building a company, not yet. I was building a spine. It was just me, some whiteboard sketches, and a stack of tech docs scattered across the floor. There wasn't much furniture, a folding chair, a mattress on the floor, a chipped mug I used for coffee and instant soup, and a little corkboard pinned with notes about things like load balancing and failover logic. But that room, cracked drywall, humming radiator neighbors, arguing through paper-thin walls, that's where the system was born. Back then it didn't have a name, just folders labeled src.main and xp11stream, and inside a file I called core.js. Later renamed Hail-Chon Core when someone on our early team thought it was funny to name parts of the stack after our last names. I didn't object. The system grew faster than I expected. What started as a proof of concept became a functioning prototype. From prototype to pilot. From pilot to production. Within 6 months, I was hosting everything on cloud instances I couldn't afford to keep running without pulling side gigs. But the data flowed. Clients responded. The design worked. Not flashy, but solid. Engineers noticed. A small client became a bigger client. Then came the call from a seed investor. That first meeting was awkward. I wore a shirt 2 sizes too big and spoke too fast. The guy across from me kept checking his watch until I showed him the live demo. Then he stopped talking, just stared at the metrics, and said, "Okay, this could go somewhere." A month later, I had a co-founder, then a third, then paperwork. That's where the clause came in. I didn't think anyone would ever read the fine print. Founders rarely do. Most of us just want to build. But I had already lost something once before. Not a company, but an idea. A prototype I built during my undergrad. Shared it too early. Watched someone else take credit. No drama. Just silence. One day it was mine. The next I couldn't prove it. So this time, I wrote a clause. I didn't make it sound aggressive. No legalese threats. No grand in the event of betrayal speeches. Just a few lines in the operating agreement. Section 9.2c, titled plainly, Reversion of Intellectual Property Rights. It read, "In the event that the original author of any foundational system is removed from their operational role without documented cause, all associated IP rights and system ownership shall revert to said author provided such systems were created prior to formal incorporation." I highlighted it. Mason, my lawyer at the time, raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll forget this?" I shrugged. Hope not. But if they do, I'll remember. He nodded. Didn't say anything else. Just made sure it stayed in. By the time we incorporated, that clause had been reviewed 3 times. No one objected. No one noticed. They were too focused on share percentages and vesting schedules. No one cared about the systems. Only what the systems could become. But I wasn't building potential. I was building control. Years passed. The company grew. I stopped coding every day, started managing, reviewing, advising. But the core never changed. Hail Core stayed intact, tucked deep inside the system like a black box. It handled the logic no one liked to touch. License enforcement, server-side validation, system reboots. It wasn't sexy, it just worked. Somewhere along the way they stopped asking how. Just assumed the system was self-sustaining, invisible magic. When newer engineers asked about the back-end structure, someone would wave a hand and say, "That's legacy. Hale wrote it. Don't mess with it." And they didn't, because it was stable, because it was scary, Because it had my name on it. I stopped going to the early meetings, stopped pushing for roadmap features, let them believe I was disengaged. They never understood the difference between silence and surrender. The system didn't need me in the room. It was me, and buried under 10 layers of dependency invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. Was that clause? Not in the code, in the contract, but I mirrored it. A small comment block buried at the top of the module. Reversion protocol if triggered. All external licenses must revalidate origin. Only original author retains override rights. See Clause 9.2c Operating Agreement v1.3. Nobody noticed. It looked like a placeholder, an old note, legacy noise. But it wasn't. It was a fuse. And I kept the match. That studio apartment is gone now. The building's been renovated. Probably has smart locks and an espresso bar downstairs. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still see that cracked screen. The lines of code glowing faint blue. That night, I didn't just write a system. I wrote a warning. They just didn't read it. For a while, things were good, at least on the surface. After our Series A closed, I started showing up to fewer meetings. Not because I wasn't invited at first, but because there wasn't much for me to say. The system ran. The clients were happy. The dashboards didn't crash. And when something did break, they still called me first, quietly, late at night, like a ghost in the machine. I liked it that way. I didn't need credit. I didn't need a spotlight. Let the CEO do the interviews. Let the design team post updates with hashtags. Let the new hires take selfies in front of the office mural. I stayed in the back, in the logs, in the back-end configuration files no one else wanted to touch. The truth is, I wasn't building the company anymore. I was maintaining it, stabilizing it, carving out silence beneath the noise. The company was growing, and I was drifting. It started slowly. Slack messages got shorter. Weekly syncs became bi-weekly, then optional, then gone. The new COO, Clara, came in after our Series B. Shiny resume, ex-meta, buzzwords for blood. She wore those soft shoulder blazers with sneakers and said things like operational agility and founder redundancy. I didn't take it personally. Not yet. She dropped by my office once a week at first. Just checking in, she'd say, sipping some green juice that smelled like regret. Then she'd ask about the system, how stable it was, whether it needed to scale differently, if it could be handed off. I gave short answers, clear ones, no more than necessary. And she'd always smile and say, "God, I wish everyone here was as low maintenance as you." I smiled back, but inside something started ticking. The first official change came in the form of a new hire DevOps lead. He was young, polished, great with Terraform and presentations. Clara introduced him in an all-hands as the missing piece to our long-term engineering vision. He waved. I nodded. The next day he asked me what Hail Core did. I told him it holds everything together. He laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. A month later, I lost root access to the deployment environment. No email, no heads up. Just a permission-denied prompt while I was running a system check. I asked the junior engineer. He shrugged and said, "Thought you were stepping back from ops." I wasn't, but I didn't correct him. It wasn't worth the noise, not yet. Then came the meetings I wasn't invited to. Product syncs, client roadmap reviews, internal architecture rework plans. I only found out they happened after the fact slides posted decisions made timelines set. And still when a production error popped up at 2 a.m., I was the one they called. Not Clara, not the DevOps lead, me. Because I knew where the system bled. They praised me publicly. On the company blog, I was still listed as co-founder and system visionary. On LinkedIn, Clara tagged me in a post about legacy leadership. But inside the company, I was becoming folklore. A name people said with a kind of nostalgic affection like an old mentor they never met. Someone once called me the architect behind the curtain. At the time, it was meant as a compliment. Now it felt like a quiet way of saying he's not relevant anymore. One afternoon, I got a call from Elias, one of the earliest engineers I hired. Smart guy. Quiet. We used to review commit logs together over stale coffee. He said, "Hey, just so you know, they're moving some modules off your branch." I asked which ones. He paused. All of them. I didn't say much, just thanked him. Then I logged in. They hadn't deleted anything. Just cloned Hail Core into a new structure. Wrapped it in a shiny package. Called it Core Vantage. Cute name, but the spine was still mine. And so was the license logic embedded in it. A week later, I got an internal report sent to the wrong inbox. A client was experiencing latency issues. Their data dashboard was timing out every few hours. No one could explain why. I could. They had disconnected one of the verification nodes that still pinged Hail Core for authentication. Without it, the session tokens expired prematurely. There was a workaround, but only I knew it. I didn't offer it. That night I wrote a note in my notebook. Small, clean handwriting. They're building over old bones. Still think it's new. The following morning I walked into the kitchen during an all-hands breakfast. Clara was giving a speech. She said something about moving fast, leaving behind old structures. I stood in the back, poured coffee, didn't stay long. But before I left, I saw her nod toward the engineering team and say, "We've outgrown the past." And just for a second she looked at me. No smile, no malice, just a glance, then she kept talking. That was the first time I realized they weren't just moving on, they were preparing to remove me. And part of me had already accepted it, because it didn't matter how they framed the transition. They were standing on something I built. Something that still carried my name legally, structurally, and silently. They just hadn't realized it yet. There wasn't a single moment where it all changed. No announcement, no official title removal, no farewell Slack message with clapping emojis. It was quieter than that, more deliberate, more practiced. They didn't cut me out, they just worked around me. It started with a folder. One of the shared team drives previously labeled Infrastructure Core was duplicated under a new name, Ops Vision 2.0. I didn't think much of it at first. New naming conventions were a monthly trend. Every new hire needed to leave their mark. But when I opened the folder, I saw something strange. A full system diagram, similar to mine. Almost identical. Except my name wasn't anywhere on it. No author line, no legacy tag. Not even a comment block referencing Hail Core. It was like I never existed. Then came the roadmap. A PDF posted late one Friday titled Q4 Systems Optimization. I wasn't on the distribution list. Someone else forwarded it to me. They used a lot of soft words, decentralizing decision authority, shifting from founder-reliant systems, modularizing legacy dependencies. Every paragraph was padded with compliments. A subtle tone of "we're so grateful, but it's time." There was even a slide called Looking Ahead with a photo of a bridge under construction. I remember staring at it for a long time. The irony didn't hit me until later. They were building a new bridge, using steel from the one I'd already built. I tried not to take it personally. That was the voice in my head. Don't be defensive. Don't make it about ego. Let them evolve. So I did what I always did. I stepped back, observed, took notes. But part of me knew what this was. It wasn't evolution. It was extraction. They weren't growing past me. They were hollowing me out. The next time I spoke in a meeting, it felt like an interruption. We were reviewing system uptime for a major client. One of the new platform leads was presenting slides. I noticed a flaw in the logic, something about token expiration not accounting for a variable delay in regional caching. I mentioned it, politely, short, one sentence. The presenter blinked, paused. Then Clara jumped in. "That's an interesting point," she said, "but we've moved past that caching layer. It's not really part of the new framework." Except it was. I knew it. Everyone on the back-end team knew it. But no one said anything. They just moved to the next slide. After that, I stopped talking in meetings. Instead, I started watching patterns. Slack threads I used to be tagged in now skipped my name. My email was left off project update chains. Meetings I had created were now rescheduled without notice. At first, I asked about it. Got replies like, "Oh, must have been a calendar glitch." Or, "We figured you were busy with higher-level things." Then I stopped asking. Elias, the engineer who warned me earlier, stayed in touch. Sometimes he'd send me snippets. "Hey, just so you know, they're rewriting the API call chain, stripping out your signature logic." I asked if they understood what that would break. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. They were trying to rebuild a skeleton, without knowing which bones still mattered. And maybe the worst part, they weren't being malicious. Not openly, not with slander or confrontation. Just soft exclusion, strategic ignorance, polite amnesia. They said things like, "We're optimizing workflow, we're building a new culture, we're evolving." What they meant was, "We're cutting out the past." I kept working, silently, still showing up, still shipping small fixes, still keeping the engine running. Because the system still mattered. Because real users still depended on it. Because somewhere deep down I was still proud of what I built. Until one day a new junior engineer reached out to me directly. A woman named June, fresh out of grad school, brilliant fast learner. She DM'd me at 11 p.m. "Hey, sorry to bother you. I'm trying to figure out why our staging environment keeps failing license checks. No one seems to know where that logic lives. Someone said you might have built it." I replied simply, "It's in Hail Core. Look under License Verify, line 82. 5 minutes later, she wrote back, "Oh wow, that fixed it. Thank you so much. I didn't even know that module was still live. Still live, still running, still invisible." That message stuck with me. Not because it was disrespectful, but because it was honest. They didn't know. They really didn't know. They were building on top of something they no longer understood, and hoping it would keep holding. A few days later, I walked by the server room. The door was propped open during a hardware audit. Inside, I saw one of the new system leads pointing at a diagram on the whiteboard. At the center was a box labeled Core Layer, and underneath it, someone had written in marker, "Can we replace this?" I stood there for a second. No one noticed me. I turned around, kept walking. But I remember thinking, you can replace a label. You can rename a file. You can write me out of the org chart. But the core still knows who wrote it. It was a Tuesday when it happened. I remember because the coffee machine had been broken since the weekend. Someone left a sticky note on it that said, "Out of order just like this place." No one had taken it down. The office was quiet, people moving, typing, checking Slack. And somewhere on the 4th floor, a junior engineer made a mistake. Her name was Ria. New, smart, eager. She'd just been promoted to a rotation on the systems team. I liked her. Still do, actually. She asked good questions, didn't pretend to know everything. And that morning, someone asked her to clean up deprecated files from our staging environment. She did exactly what she was told. Opened the wrong folder. Deleted Hail Core JS from staging. It took 11 minutes for someone to notice, not because anything exploded. There were no flames or flashing red dashboards, just a quiet error log. License ping failed, token expiry mismatch, data stream delay. Then silence. The monitoring system flagged it. Elias was the first to raise a brow. He pinged me just 2 words. "You see this?" I typed back, "Checking now." I logged into the mirror instance, saw the flags, saw the failure, saw the missing file, and then I saw the commit. User Raya.sing.msg cleanup deprecated auth module. It wasn't her fault. The folder had been renamed. No comments left behind, no tags. Just a module sitting quietly doing its job, until someone decided it looked unnecessary. That's the thing about quiet systems. They disappear from memory long before they disappear from architecture. I didn't fix it. Not immediately. I watched. For the next 2 hours, I let the system run with the failure. Nothing catastrophic, just drag. Clients refreshing dashboards 3 or 4 times. One API call in 10 timing out. A long delay in key renewal. Just enough to irritate, not enough to investigate. At 11:42 a.m., Clara posted in Engineering General, "Anyone seeing these token issues?" The replies were hesitant. Looking into it. Maybe caching load balancer misrouting. I stayed silent. By noon, Ria realized what had happened. She messaged me directly. "Lucian, I think I messed something up. I deleted a module I didn't recognize, and now token auth is failing on staging. Was it part of something critical? Please tell me it wasn't core." I replied it was. Long pause. Then she wrote, "I am so sorry. I thought it was dead code. I just said it wasn't." 15 minutes later, the DevOps lead emailed a request to restore the previous deployment version. By then, I had already uploaded a patch to the Shadow instance, not the original file, a simplified one. No license enforcement, no silent pings. just enough to get things working again. The system came back online. Sort of. But it wasn't the same. The heartbeat was gone. And I knew they'd feel it soon. Later that day, Elias stopped by my desk. He didn't sit, just leaned on the doorway. They're saying it was a legacy conflict, he said. They think some of the modules weren't version locked. I didn't respond. He added, "You know, they're going to try to rewrite everything now, right?" I nodded. He looked down. Then he said something strange. Something I didn't expect. "I always wondered if you planned for this." I looked at him, didn't smile, didn't deny it. He didn't ask again. Just walked away. That night I reopened the contract. Section 9.2c. Same words, same logic, same trigger path. Still valid, still untouched. I highlighted one line with a pen just to remind myself. Operational ownership reverts upon breach of structural continuity, resulting from unjustified removal of core IP. That file deletion counted. Technically. Legally. But I didn't trigger it. Not yet. Instead, I opened the backup of Hail Core, the real one. The one with the layered protection logic. The one with the embedded self-check. I read through every line. Didn't change a word. Then I saved it to an external drive. Labeled the folder Foundation Dark's Original v1.0 untouched. Tucked it into the sleeve of my laptop bag. Same as before. Still waiting. The next morning the system seemed fine. Token issues were down. Uptime was stable. Everyone moved on. But under the surface something had shifted. For the first time, the company had proven one thing: they could break the system. And now they knew they didn't know how to fix it. They thought I was legacy. They thought I was obsolete. But even without root access, even without a title, I still had the source. I still had the clause. And now, I had precedent. It came through by accident. A forwarded email. Wrong recipient. Wrong day. Right moment. The subject line was short. Founders and Legacy Roles Transition Draft. It was sent by Clara. Meant for the board and the executive ops team. But someone CC'd me by mistake. It wasn't a long email. 4 paragraphs, 6 bullet points. But I read it 5 times before closing my screen. The tone was polished. Professional. Like a presentation for a rebrand. Words like streamlining and alignment floated between lines like smoke. It started with a compliment. Lucian has been instrumental in getting Arcanum to where it is today. Then came the shift. However, as we look towards Series C and new enterprise positioning, we need a technical leadership style that reflects our modern product vision. And finally, the real intent. We're recommending a formal timeline to phase out remaining founder dependencies, both technical and cultural, in Q2. They weren't firing me, not exactly. They were building a paper trail, just enough documentation to make it seem inevitable. Clean, reasonable, almost generous. A new narrative was being drafted, not the one I lived, the one they wanted to tell. One where I stepped aside, gratefully, with a quote about trusting the next generation. I closed the laptop, sat still for a moment, let the silence wrap around me. I wasn't angry, I wasn't surprised, just done pretending. They had made a mistake, not the email, the assumption behind it, that I had nothing left to protect, that I'd just drift away, that all I wanted was peace. They forgot what I wrote into the foundation. They forgot the clause. I pulled out the folder that never left my bag. Hard copy of the original agreement, initialed by every co-founder. Dated, notarized, stored in triplicate. Section 9.2c. In the event of unjust removal of original technical authorship from operational control, all rights to the underlying system architecture revert to the author. And just beneath it, breach includes any non-consensual severing of access, formal or informal, that materially limits oversight or authorship. They were doing exactly that. Politely, softly but clearly. They were breaching. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about keeping control. It was about remembering who actually built the thing. The contracts, the clients, the capital. Those came later. I was there before the logo, before the chairs, before the floor had carpet. And back then I wrote the system with one goal in mind: it should never be owned by someone who didn't understand it. The next morning I showed up early. Unusually early. No one else was in yet. I walked into the server room, punched in the 6-digit code I still remembered, sat in front of the terminal, The authentication prompt blinked. Root ups node $03. I didn't type anything. Didn't need to. The system still recognized me. Still trusted the digital fingerprint I'd built years ago. Like muscle memory. I logged out, locked the door behind me, went back to my desk. Clara walked in an hour later, all energy and optimism. She smiled when she saw me, made some comment about the weather, asked if I'd seen the transition notes. I said I had. She nodded like that was progress. Then she said something odd. "This'll be good for everyone, Lucian. You'll finally have space to breathe." I just looked at her, said nothing, because in my mind I was already writing the next phase. That afternoon, the DevOps team started a new ticket series called Legacy Removal Phase 1. The first task: decouple Hail core from production. No warning, no conversation. Just a ticket in Jira, assigned to a team that didn't write a single line of it. Later that day, Ria messaged me again. They want me to help decommission the core. Do I say anything? I typed for a while, deleted it, typed again. Finally, I sent one line. "Document everything. Keep a local backup. Don't get involved." She reacted with a sad face. Didn't reply again. I watched the tickets pile up, one after another, naming things I'd built as legacy risks. No one reached out. No one asked for history. Just moved forward like I wasn't there. I spent the next few evenings reviewing everything. Audit logs, server configs, version histories. Every time I found a line that tied back to me, I marked it. Not because I planned to use it yet, but because I wanted to remember who wrote what and why. The moment they tried to remove me from the system, they made me part of its history in a new way. And when history is ignored, it doesn't disappear. It just waits. If you've made it this far into the story, you know by now this isn't just a story about being replaced. It's about what gets forgotten, what gets erased, what gets rewritten by people who didn't live the beginning. If that resonates with you, if you've ever been sidelined by people who thought they knew better, I'm telling the whole thing, all 12 parts, one truth at a time. Stick around. After that email, things moved fast. There were no formal meetings, no HR sit-downs, no direct conversations. Just more tasks, quietly rerouted, more files, quietly renamed, and me, quietly erased. But I didn't resist. I didn't push back. I watched. Watching is a discipline most people overlook. They think silence is weakness. That absence equals apathy. But when you've built systems for a living real ones, you learn to study the logs. You learn to track patterns, to know what matters not by what's said, but by what disappears first. I started keeping my own record, not in company tools. Offline, personal. Every decision that bypassed me, every module tagged for removal, every meeting that used to be mine. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it to stay clear, to see the whole picture. Because once you stop being useful, people stop hiding what they really think. They started calling it technical debt. The code I wrote, the backbone of the system, the thing they built their valuation on. Clara said it during a product town hall. To move faster, we need to stop treating legacy infrastructure as sacred. Just because something got us here doesn't mean it should take us further. A few people nodded. Some glanced at me. I didn't react. I started going in early again, before most people arrived. While the building was still half dark and the only sound was the hum of old vents, I liked the stillness, the honesty of it. No positioning, no spin, just machines doing what they were told. I reviewed logs, ran silent integrity checks, monitored uptime from a private dashboard they forgot I still had access to. Nothing broke, but everything was fraying, slowly. They thought the system was modular enough to survive, but I knew better. It was held together by trust, not code. One morning I found a line in the deployment log that didn't make sense. A batch script triggered from an unknown repo. File name core, replacement alpha, -h. No author metadata, no review notes, just an auto-executed push into the staging environment. I traced it. It led to the DevOps lead. He'd spun up a sandbox environment 2 weeks earlier. Had been testing a version of the platform that ran without Hail core. It failed every license check. He built a patch that skipped validation entirely, which meant anyone could ping the API no token, no security gate, just open stream. For a company in analytics, that's a problem. I downloaded the file, didn't delete it, didn't fix it, just stored it, labeled it evidence redundancy attempt V1, and backed it up, twice. That night I didn't sleep much, not because I was stressed, because I was clear. The moment they shipped that patch to production, the moment they let it go live, that would be my trigger. Not an attack, not a warning, just a line crossed. I went to my cabinet, pulled out the printed copy of the operating agreement, the one I hadn't touched since Series A. Clause 9.2c was still there, still highlighted in blue, still initialed by every founder. I read it slowly, word for word. If the original author of system-level architecture is materially removed from operational authority, and any modification materially degrades original functionality or exposes client data to undue risk, full rights revert to said author. It didn't require a public firing, didn't require a meeting, only evidence of degradation, only proof that the system was being altered in bad faith. And I had it. I looked over at the USB drive I kept in the desk drawer. Same one since the beginning, still encrypted, still untouched. Inside it, the full blueprint, original code, full rollback script, and a clause summary drafted by Mason, my lawyer, 3 years earlier. I opened it, reviewed the files. Everything was intact. I didn't feel proud, didn't feel victorious, just calm, like a contingency plan moving from theory to readiness. The next day I was asked to attend a transition alignment meeting. No agenda, no attachments, just a time block, 4:30 p.m., same time they always used. That morning I wore a blazer, first time in months, no reason, just instinct. I brought my laptop, a printed copy of the clause, and the USB. Didn't plug it in, didn't say a word about it, just set it down next to my coffee like it was nothing. In the elevator I stood next to Clara. She didn't say much, just a polite smile. She checked her phone 3 times between floors. I didn't check mine once. As we walked toward the glass-walled conference room, I noticed something. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, like people knew what was about to happen. Some looked up, then looked away. I stepped inside. HR was already seated. So was the COO. A new guy I hadn't met yet, probably legal. No one said termination, no one said your time here is over. But I'd built enough systems to recognize a soft shutdown when I saw one. They called it realignment, post-founder visioning, system neutrality. I listened, took notes, didn't interrupt. At the end, the HR rep slid a folder across the table, a summary of the transition plan, confidentiality terms, and a suggested LinkedIn post I could use if I wanted to frame it positively. I didn't open the folder, just sat there for a moment. Then I asked one question. Has the board reviewed clause 9.2c? The room fell quiet. No one answered. So I picked up the USB, put it in my pocket, stood, and walked out. It happened on a Thursday. No storms, no raised voices, just quiet intentions wrapped in HR language. They booked the conference room with the frosted glass walls. Mid-afternoon. Calendar invite with no subject line. Only a block of time labeled update. That's how you know. It's never titled termination, just update. Like a software patch. I walked in 5 minutes early. Clara was already seated. So was the HR rep Rebecca and the new legal guy in the corner typing before the meeting even started. They offered me water, I declined. Someone made a comment about how grateful the company was for all I'd done. Then someone else said they hoped this would be a smooth process. I didn't answer. Rebecca opened a folder. Inside was a severance package. Nothing generous, just industry standard, tied to an NDA. The usual language, no disparagement, no disclosure, no mention of the clause. I waited until she finished reading, then placed a single sheet of paper on the table. It was a clean copy of section 9.2c, printed in black ink, underlined once in blue. No speech, no threat. Just a line highlighted operational ownership reverts to the author upon unjust removal and systemic risk. They didn't speak right away. Then Clara said, "We've reviewed the documents, Lucien. We don't believe that clause is enforceable." I looked at her, not hostile, not surprised, just still. "Have you filed any amendments since Series A?" I asked. Silence. "No." The legal guy shifted slightly in his chair, didn't look up. I nodded. Then I stood, took my folder, took the USB, and left the room. They didn't stop me. I think they expected me to threaten legal action, or call someone, or storm out, but they didn't understand how quiet systems work. You don't need to raise your voice when you wrote the fail-safes. You just execute the plan. Back at my desk, I opened the laptop. No Slack messages, no emails. Just an empty afternoon and a background hum from a system that still ran on code I built. I typed a short note into my private log. 4:36 p.m. Verbal termination acknowledged. Clause still valid. Triggering prep protocol. I didn't launch anything. Not yet. I just started a countdown. First, I backed up everything. The clean copy of Hail core. The logs of recent patch failures. The unauthorized sandbox scripts. And the full version history with my author tag intact. Then I archived a private audit log. One file, one name reversion package v0.1 zip. I encrypted it, saved it to 2 separate drives, one to keep, one to send. At 7:12 p.m., I got a Slack message. From Clara, short, appreciate your professionalism today. Let's try to close this out without drama. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I left the office late that night. No one else was there. As I walked out, I passed the server room. The lights were dim, but I could still see the racks. Still hear the faint sound of fans keeping everything alive. I paused at the door, just long enough to look through the glass. Then I walked away. The next morning, I worked from home. No meetings, no questions. Just a screen, and the system. I ran a local test of the rollback script. Watched every module reinitialize in the order I'd designed. Watched Hail core boot from a clean environment. It worked. Every token validated. Every session held. The system remembered who built it. At noon, I drafted an email. Subject line, Notice of Reversion. Section 9.2c. 4 lines of text. Per the original operating agreement, Section 9.2c is now in effect. Documentation and evidence attached. Ownership of system-level architecture reverts to the original author effective immediately. Legal counsel will follow up. I attached the reversion package. BCC'd Mason, my lawyer. CC'd Clara, HR, and legal. Didn't send it, not yet. I waited. At 3:05 p.m., the company pushed the patch live. The one that replaced the license verification logic. The one that failed silent validation. The one that bypassed source ownership. I watched the logs. The system blinked, hesitated, then something cracked. One client dashboard dropped to 0. Another showed invalid session warnings. 3 back-end services stalled. Clara posted a message in engineering leads. Seeing issues with core auth. Anyone? No reply. Then a second message. Was that patch reviewed by compliance? Still no reply. At 3:27 p.m., I sent the email. I closed my laptop, sat back, and waited. Not for panic, not for chaos, just for recognition. They built their future on a system I never gave them full control over. Now they'd remember why that mattered. I didn't check my inbox for a while after I sent the email. Didn't need to. The system was already responding, quietly, precisely, exactly the way I built it to. At 3:44 p.m., the first external client ping failed license validation. Not publicly, just a silent block. Session denied. By 4:12 p.m., 5 other endpoints had dropped from the network. Nothing visible on the front end. No flashing errors. No alerts. Just numbers slowly falling behind the curtain. Metrics delayed. Analytics frozen. Dashboards out of sync with real-time data. The kind of drift you only notice when it's too late to trace back. They thought it was a bug. Maybe a race condition. A small config error pushed with the latest patch. I watched them debug in real-time Slack messages flying back and forth, guesses wrapped in confidence. Could be the data cache. Restarting the auth node, running a hotfix now. They didn't know what they were chasing, because what they broke wasn't just code. It was trust. It was authorship, and now the system no longer recognized them. At 5:06 p.m., a senior client reached out. Healthcare, big account. One of the first I ever onboarded back when our backend was still held together with duct tape and willpower. They sent an urgent ticket. Critical sync failure. Dashboard not populating. Data integrity risk. It was flagged PO, escalated twice. No one on the current team could fix it, because they had removed Hail core. And with it, the logic that authenticated data streams on a per-client token cycle. They didn't just break a feature, they severed a handshake. The system no longer knew who to trust. That night I logged into my personal dashboard. Same one I built years ago to monitor the heartbeat of the infrastructure. Green lights turning yellow, yellow fading to red. Metrics slowing like blood thickening in a blocked artery. And no one could explain it. Because the explanations weren't in the code. They were in the clause, in the logic, in the intent. They'd removed the author but kept the shell, and now it was collapsing under its own weight. At 8:22 p.m. I got an email from Clara. "We've received your notice. Our legal team is reviewing. In the meantime, we'd appreciate any insight you have into the recent system disruptions." No greeting, no apology, just hope, packaged like professionalism. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the secondary package, the one Mason and I prepared years ago. Not a lawsuit, not a demand, just documentation, version control history, proof of authorship, clause validation, evidence of degradation after unauthorized removal. I sent it, BCC'd myself, then closed my laptop. They didn't need help, they needed accountability. The next morning, the Slack channel for engineering was locked. Private. Access denied. I didn't try to get in, didn't want to, but someone forwarded me a screenshot. There were messages time-stamped through the night. Core service not responding, fallback logic failing, client X threatening SLA breach. Anyone heard from Lucian? At 9:40 a.m. another email came in. This time from someone I hadn't heard from in years. An enterprise client, one of our earliest supporters. His message was simple. "Are you still with Arcanum? We're getting mixed signals. If not, I'd like to talk." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I searched my files, pulled up the original onboarding documentation, saw my name at the bottom, every page signed, every integration credited. That mattered now, because legal proof of ownership doesn't always sit in a contract. Sometimes it lives in the logs. By noon, the company issued an internal freeze. No new deployments. All engineers on stability priority. Meetings were canceled. Project sprints paused. Brand posts pulled from the calendar. The silence spread. Not dramatic, just heavy. The kind that wraps around you before anyone says what they're really afraid of. At 1:32 p.m., the board got involved. I wasn't there, but I knew the rhythm. Someone asked what the clause meant. Someone asked why it wasn't caught during diligence. Someone asked who still had access to the original architecture. And someone eventually said what they were all thinking. What happens if he takes it back? But by then I hadn't taken anything. Not yet. All I'd done was stop giving, stop patching, stop being the shadow fix they relied on. They didn't lose the system because I sabotaged it. They lost it because they built everything on something they didn't understand. That evening I sat at my desk, no monitors on, just quiet. I thought about the first time I ran Hail Core, the way it hummed into place, the way it made everything else make sense. And now it was doing what it was always designed to do, protect itself from people who didn't build it. They called it a crisis. I called it symmetry. The first real message came on a Saturday morning. I was sitting in my kitchen, no laptop open, no notes in front of me, just black coffee cooling in a chipped mug. My phone lit up, blocked number. I let it ring twice, picked up on the third. Lucian. The voice was familiar, measured, tired. Yeah, I didn't ask who it was. Didn't have to. "It's Daniel. From Medscope." I waited, let him speak. "We're seeing problems again. More than before. Real delays. The dashboard's not syncing, and the support team just keeps escalating sideways." I stayed quiet. He continued. "Look, I know you're not with them anymore. That's why I'm calling. Tell me straight. Is this salvageable?" I heard something else in his voice. Not panic, but something close to resignation. Like he already knew the answer. I didn't rush my reply. "I haven't touched that system in days." Pause. "I know," he said. "That's the problem." We sat in the silence. Then he said it. "If you're planning to rebuild something, we'd rather work with the person who actually wrote it." He didn't offer money, didn't pitch contracts. Just a sentence, simple, direct. I didn't commit, didn't promise anything. I just said I'll let you know. The call ended, and I sat with that quiet again. Not triumphant, not bitter, just centered. It wasn't the first client to reach out, but it was the first to say it out loud. That they stayed not because of the brand, not because of Clara's updates, not because of the podcast interviews or quarterly product webinars. They stayed because I was still there, still watching, still patching things in the dark. And now they were gone, the patches, the quiet interventions, and the trust that held everything together. By Monday, I had 3 more messages. One from a CTO in Boston, one from a founder in Austin, one from someone I didn't recognize, but their subject line read, "Are you operational independently?" That's how these things start. Not with press releases, but with cautious whispers. Inside the company, I could sense the pacing shift. Their social media went silent. The tone in their investor updates flattened. Clara posted a vague status update on LinkedIn. In times of challenge, teams grow stronger. We're solving some internal scale issues and learning a lot along the way. It got likes, mostly from people outside the company, the kind who always clap for the narrative, not the reality. But the comments were thin. No client tags, no team excitement, just a slow scroll of emptiness. I opened a private Slack, one I'd built years ago, originally used to coordinate late-night sprints with a few early engineers. Still had a handful of members. People who never fully left. People who still remembered the way things were built. I sent one message. "You still monitoring core?" Elias replied first. "Every day." Then Ria. "I kept the clean copy, yours." Then Sam. "If you rebuild, I'm in." I didn't ask them to. Didn't recruit. Didn't plan. They just said yes. Like they'd been waiting for the moment the noise stopped. That night I reopened the blueprint. The real one. Not the patched investor-approved market-ready version. The version with unbroken logic. The version built for scale and silence. I printed it. Set the pages on the kitchen table. Watched the light hit the ink. It still held. The system had cracks, yes, but the foundation still intact. Still mine. I wrote a note to myself. Keep it small, keep it quiet, keep it clean. No need for branding yet, no press, no noise. Just core architecture. Just trust. 3 days later, Clara called. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't mention the clause. Didn't mention the clients. She just said, "If there's still a way to fix this, we'd prefer to do it privately." No apology, just negotiation. I didn't call back. They weren't asking for help. They were asking for erasure. A reset, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't been written out. Like the system hadn't already started choosing sides. But systems remember. And people do too if you give them reason. By the end of the week, I had 6 more inquiries. Not formal, not desperate. Just one sentence over and over again in different ways. "We trust you. We're tired of pretending we trust them." I didn't answer them all. Not yet. Still too early. Still too fragile. But I knew what was coming. Not revenge, not takeover. Just clarity. The moment when people stopped believing in what they were sold and returned to what actually worked. I wasn't rebuilding a brand. I was restoring a system. One block at a time. With the people who still remembered who wrote it. The first public crack came on a Tuesday. Medscope, our oldest client, announced they were suspending their contract. Cited operational inconsistencies and security concerns. They didn't name names. Didn't mention the clause. Didn't mention me. But I saw the phrasing. They knew where the fault line started. The next was Juno Analytics. Posted a brief statement on their site. "We value stability and clarity. Until those are restored, we are pausing all integrations with Arcanum systems." 3 sentences, no anger, no explanation. Just distance. Clean, cold, final. Clara went silent online. No updates, no reposts, no hashtags about resilience or learning. Just quiet. Internally, things started shaking loose. Engineers jumping ship. Support teams overloaded. Junior staff asking questions no one wanted to answer. I didn't have to watch it all in real time. People sent it to me. Not out of malice, out of familiarity. They were there when I wrote the bones of the system. Now, they were watching it seize under someone else's name. One message stood out. From someone I barely remembered. Former account lead. Left the company a year ago. He sent a screenshot. It was from an internal Slack. A message from Clara timestamped 2:14 a.m. Does anyone know how to reach Lucian directly? No one replied. By Friday, the board stepped in. Again, I wasn't in the room. Didn't need to be. A friend forwarded a single sentence from the agenda. Review exposure from Clause 9.2c timeline of breach. They were finally reading the fine print. 4 weeks too late. Meanwhile, I kept working. Not on revenge, not on a takeover. Just building. Quiet. Clean. Controlled. I rented a small office. 5th floor. Glass windows. View of the same skyline I used to see from Arcanum's corner conference room. No logo on the door, just a number. Inside a long table, 3 chairs, 1 whiteboard. I sat down with Elias and Raya. Sam joined remotely. They didn't ask for titles, didn't want equity percentages. Just said, what do we rebuild first? I answered only what matters. We started with the architecture, not a clone, not a copy. A redesign, same logic, different skin. Smaller, simpler, cleaner. I opened the original Hail Core file. Scanned the comments I left years ago. Felt like reading something written by someone else, but still true. Still usable. Still mine. Word got around, not loudly, just steadily. A client would call, then another. Always the same question. Is it true you're building something? I never advertised it, never promised anything. But I said the same thing to each one. If it works, I'll let you know. They didn't need sales pitches. They already knew what didn't work. Now they were hoping for something that just ran. No buzzwords, no layers of vision. Just system, just logic, just uptime. Back at Arcanum, the spiral deepened. I heard through a friend that the DevOps lead left without notice. Took half the CI/CD documentation with him. Apparently it was never versioned properly. No backups. They tried calling me again. Different number, different email. Nothing threatening, just quiet desperation. If you have any interest in consulting, we'd like to talk. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because the offer was built on a misunderstanding. They still believed they could repair trust after the structure collapsed. They didn't realize trust was the structure. That weekend, I went back to the old office building. Just walked past, didn't go in. From the sidewalk, I looked up at the 5th floor. The blinds were closed now. The lights dim. Down the block, my new office window reflected the same sun. Same city, different weight. I didn't feel proud, didn't feel vindicated, just steady. Systems break. They always do. But if you design them well enough, if you write them honestly, they remember who built them. Even when people forget. Launch day wasn't loud. No banners, no press outreach, no vanity post on LinkedIn. Just a simple email, sent to 8 people. Subject line system ready. No logo, no company name. Just a link and a note. You trusted me once. I built this for people like you. The first response came in under 10 minutes. From Daniel at Medscope. He didn't ask questions, just replied, "We're ready to migrate," quietly. By noon, 3 more clients were onboarded. One of them used to be Clara's top account. Now, they were mine. The architecture ran smoother than expected. No patching, no workaround logic, no dependency loops wrapped around investor promises. Just system, just uptime, the way it was always meant to work. In the first week, I onboarded 5 clients. By the second, it was 10. No announcements, no marketing funnel, just whispers and proof. One evening, I got a message from Sam. He sent a screenshot. It was from Arcanum's investor board, an email thread discussing strategic reevaluation. One line stood out. He's not competing. He's just continuing. That's all I ever wanted. I didn't burn them, didn't sabotage, didn't smear. I just built what they couldn't. And then I walked away. Clara emailed me again, this time a little less polished. "We've heard you're operating independently. If there's a way to collaborate." I didn't finish reading it. Just archived the message. There was nothing to collaborate on. The system already made its decision. A few days later, I walked into the office early. Sunlight came through the blinds, tracing quiet lines across the table. Raya was already there typing. Elias was sketching integration routes on the whiteboard. No one said anything for a while. Then I stood up, uncapped a marker, and wrote 4 words at the top of the board. "Don't sell the core." Everyone nodded. No applause, no backpats. Just agreement. That was the rule. The center doesn't get traded. Not again. Later that week, one of the newer clients sent me a thank you note. Not a formal message, just a quick line. The system doesn't fight me anymore. It listens. That's rare. I pinned it to my desk. No frame, no highlight. Just there. A quiet reminder of why this mattered. I kept thinking about something Clara once said. Back when we were still at the same table, sketching out early compliance layers. She said, "Systems don't need to be fair. They just need to scale." I remember nodding at the time, but I don't believe that anymore. Scale doesn't matter if no one trusts you, and fairness isn't optional when your name is tied to every line of logic. I built this new system differently. It doesn't worship scale. It doesn't chase growth for the sake of slides. It runs clean, holds trust like a spine. And when it breaks, because every system breaks, it tells you where, why, and what it needs to heal. That's the difference. That's what they forgot. On a Wednesday afternoon, I walked past Arcanum's building again. The lights on the upper floors were off. One of the conference rooms was empty. The sign on the door had a new logo. Rebranded, reorganized, but hollow. Whatever they called it now, it wasn't what we built. Not anymore. I went back to my office, sat in front of the window, watched the light change across the skyline. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry. Just quiet and right. Systems don't remember names, but they remember authorship. And sometimes when you step away, they start to echo, until everyone else hears what you already knew. It only ever worked, because you were there. Thanks for listening to my story. If it stayed with you, if you believe systems should serve people, not power, subscribe to this channel. We're building stories that cut deeper than drama. Stories that remind you who really holds the code.